Representative Petri, one of your legislative initiatives is H.R. 655, the Assessment Accuracy and Improvement Act. Now, this has to do with adaptive testing. What exactly is adaptive testing?
Adaptive testing is something that didn't used to be possible and now is because of basically of computer technology. The way it works is a student sits down at a computer and takes a test, whether it's a math test or a reading test or whatever, at their grade level. And as they start answering the questions that come up on the screen, the test will gradually change depending on how many of the questions the student is getting correctly. If the student can't answer any of the questions, it will start asking easier and easier questions until the student gets a certain percentage of the answers correct. And conversely, if the student is acing the test and answering every question correctly, starts asking more and more difficult questions until the student, again, is answering a certain percentage of the questions correctly and getting a certain percentage wrong. That way you can establish both underperforming students and what their approximate level is, and overachieving students. And that's both are very important for teachers and administrators, so as to identify how a student's actually performing. I think of it as the old-fashioned test that was most similar is probably the eye test that we all take if we need to get a driver's license or something like that. You go in, you look at a series of squares. The instructor will ask you to perhaps look at the biggest letter and say what it is and move you on down. Or they might say, what's the smallest letter you can see in the third box? And you say D or whatever it is, and so on. And by doing that, you're able to establish the person's level of sight. This uses the same principle, but with computers.
But now, apparently, there's a problem using these tests to satisfy the No Child Left Behind law.
Yeah, the test has been developed by nonprofit people in the education area. A number of foundations and experts on testing have developed it. They've tested it in every which way. The test has itself been tested, and it produces very good results very quickly, in fact, generally superior to other types of tests. The difficulty has come in that under No Child Left Behind, the states are supposed to provide similar written exams to all students. And the Education Department has said, first of all, this is not written because it's on a computer, and secondly, it's not the same test to all students because each student who is taking a particular test is not answering the same questions in the same order. Of course, in that, I think that's basically kind of ridiculous. They are taking the same test. It's constructed differently because the test will vary uniformly depending on how a student's answering it. So that's why the results are so good compared with many other tests. And one of the important things about this is that it provides very rapid feedback. The system that's used under No Child Left Behind is quite frustrating for parents and teachers and administrators because when they do take the test, they often don't get the results back for 6 months or so, and it's really kind of yesterday's news. The adaptive testing works so well. Kids enjoy taking it, actually, if it's possible to enjoy taking a test, and the results are quickly available. So in my own district in Wisconsin, about a third of the school districts use adaptive testing because they feel it's a useful tool for the administrators, and as I said, for teachers and parents to assess how people are doing, and they get rapid feedback. But they have to do that on their own nickel. It would be a lot better if it could be integrated with the No Child Left Behind national approach and allowed by the Education Department. That's why I introduced that legislation.
Well, so in other words, the schools find adaptive testing so valuable that about a third of the schools in the 6th district use them even though they don't fulfill the requirement under No Child Left Behind, and then they have to do another test that satisfies the Department of Education.
Right. It's not as though the federal government suddenly came up with some wonderful system called No Child Left Behind that no one had thought of before. I can remember back when I went to school, which is now some time ago, in morning kindergarten, taking basic assessment tests. Wisconsin, and I think most school systems across the country, but certainly in our state, have had periodic tests and assessments for many, many years, and have tried to find the most accurate and effective tests that they possibly can. And a big part of a test is not just taking the test, but the feedback. And for that to be relevant, you have to have the results of the test fairly quickly. So it's not in a year or two. It's almost impossible to have meaningful feedback about something. You've moved on to another grade or another subject and so on.
And so why is that feedback so quick?
The feedback's quick because you're sitting at the computer, it goes right in, and they can print out the results practically instantaneously.
Whereas the test required by the Education Department?
The written tests are done by pencil and paper, and then they're gathered together and sent off to some assessment center or state headquarters, and that process takes considerably longer.
So now, what would your bill, the Assessment Accuracy and Improvement Act, H.R. 655, do?
What our bill would do is to allow states, if they wished, to use adaptive testing to meet the No Child Left Behind requirement of having periodic student assessments.
What kind of support and what kind of opposition are you getting for this?
Well, this bill is getting very strong bipartisan support. Several of my colleagues, I think particularly Brian Baird from Washington State, who's a Democrat with some considerable experience in the education area, my colleague Wu from Oregon is also very interested, and I believe is co-sponsored the legislation. And I've received a lot of, as I said, bipartisan interest in the legislation. No opposition that I'm aware of, except the bureaucratic opposition from the Education Department, which somehow has decided that they just don't want to support this. Now, they are hanging their hat on the language of No Child Left Behind, but they so far have taken the position, maybe with the new administration they'll change that position, that I certainly hope they do, that they don't like adaptive testing because every child's not taking the same test.
What do you think the prospects are for the bill?
I think the prospects are pretty good. I think we have a new education secretary in Arnie Duncan with real experience administering a big city school system, Chicago. I think we've got a number of people who have come into the Education Department who've had experience at out in the field, and I think they'll take a fresh look at this. Part of it's a generation thing. Computers didn't exist back in the days of Abraham Lincoln or when public schools were set up, and certainly there's still a generation gap, so to speak, in people's familiarity with some of these sorts of techniques. But I think kids are very much into it and familiar with the possibilities, and it's a good teaching tool, and it's something that is growing. People using computer programs and so on to learn math and to improve their spelling and their understanding of other subjects, and they can do that quietly and just working on almost on a game-like way on a particular computer program in that subject. This is really an extension of that, which helps evaluate how that student's doing in comparison with others similarly situated.
Thank you, Representative Petri.
Thank you.